first half an hour sharing about our ministry. There's a lot of things to share. Recently, one of my college professors, Bible college professors, while I was talking to him, I happened to tell him like this: "Sir, wherever God allowed me to touch, God blessed it." That's what I would like to look back and say. I went to Nepal. I was a school teacher in Nagaland, just because of some of our family difficulties. Maybe I'll go a little behind. I was a son of a pastor, and I grew up in Trivandrum. So some of your songs I follow. Tirupala Nambi Vandin I used to sing while I was in Palayangote 6 months with the pastor Victor. Anybody knows?
Victor, yeah, he was the founder of that church.
Yeah.
My friend.
Okay. If I go back to that area and stay 2 weeks, I may be able to speak Tamil also. Well, I had a great desire in the early days to become a missionary where Christ has never been preached. And also there's another great desire to become a world famous 800 meters runner. But when I finished my MA in economics, the family situation was terrible. My father died when I was 14, and my mother was very, very sick. We were 8 brothers and sisters, and we learned to do everything. You tell any non-technical job, all those jobs I knew, and even now I may be able to do. And when mom was very sick, I had to find out a quick job, so I went to Nagaland. There, when I was there, I sent 2-3 months salary home. I got the news my mom also passed away. In Nagaland, after a few years 5 years of teaching, I made a decision to give my life to Christian service. It's after a big fight with the Lord. I really did not want to. Being the son of a pastor, I knew all these difficulties of a Christian worker. So I did not, in the early time, I did not want to surrender my life. But finally, I found a night around 11:30. No prompting, no, I did not attend any fasting and prayer, no preaching, no Bible study. Just the Spirit of God was really working in my life. I tried all to get rid of that feeling, but nothing worked on that day. Like 11:30 at night, I found myself lying down in my bed, all alone, tears in my eyes, and telling God, even if nobody will recognize me, even if I will have to die like a street dog, even if I will have to beg for food, I will serve you the rest of my life. And immediately I sent an application to a Bible college. Though it was, the time was over, they gave me an admission. Studied there 2 years, and I really determined to go to Nepal. I had a lot of temptations. The Bible college where I was studying, they offered me a place to teach. There were other positions in the Assemblies of God. I come from the Assemblies of God. But God helped me to stick on to the call God has given to me. And I finally decided to go to Nepal itself. Nepal was a terrible place. Those days the law said if anybody tries to convert a Nepali into Christianity or any religion, he will go to jail for 6 years. I was there. I also was in jail for some 21 days. But God was very, very, very good to us. We had several marvelous, miraculous conversions of young people. When I reached there, I was, I'm a sportsman, adventurous, and I was thinking, wow, I'll do something. But when I landed in Kathmandu airport, I found out that I am not that adventurous. I was very fearful, very scared. That was the time, the coronation of the new king. Everywhere there was police. And when I see a police, I used to think that he's after me. That sort of fear. I went on for about 2 months, and then finally I made a decision before the Lord. Lord, I don't want to be here 20 years or 25 years, but if I stay here, I will serve you, even if it is one day. I will preach the gospel and pray. 2-3 days later, 3 people walked into my room. One introduced himself as a school teacher. Another introduced himself as a music teacher. And the third introduced himself as a policeman. I was scared, really scared. But then, a few days before, I told the Lord, whatever it may be, I'm going to serve you here. I'm going to preach the gospel. So I slowly cooled down and became friendly with this policeman. It was that policeman God gave us first. We sent him to Bible college, and today he is a very strong minister, established several churches. Another young man one day walked into our house where we were worshipping. In Kathmandu, we had a worshipping place, small, maybe this much, a small place. He was a person who lost everything in his life because of his bad behavior. He left his wife. You tell any bad things, it was with him. Drinking, immoral life, pickpocketing, drugs, everything. Later I came to know from him that his initial thinking was to take one of the best shoes and run away, because he was living such a desperate life. But he sat inside. And I saw in the middle of the service, he was literally rolling on the ground, waiting, crying. I went and put my arm around him. Impossible to touch him, stinking, long and dirty nails, dirty clothes, the socks were smelling, long hair, long dirty beard. There was a sore hair and pus was getting discharged from there. But that day, Dilip Chetri gave his heart to the Lord. And I have never seen a person making such a strong, such a very good progress in his Christian life. He became I put him in a place. Incidentally, you should know that when I was in Nepal and Afghanistan, I was not the so-called full-time Christian worker. I was working for a business firm. It is with that I was working. I took Dilip Chatri to my company and gave him a job. And the first day he came back and so told me, even if they don't give me any salary, I'll work here. Because he said, I get a lot of relief. The first salary he came, brought the money and said, tell me, Pastor, what should I do? We don't call pastor there, we call Daju. Daju means older brother in Nepali. Tell me what to do with this money. I taught him about tithing and everything, and then he made tremendous progress. What we used to do was, when the group grows, 25, 30, we immediately divide it into another place. And this time we asked Dilip Chatri to be the leader of that group. He was reluctant, but then finally agreed. He became one of the highly respectable Christian leader in the country. His church grew. And today his church may have about 800 believers. And his church has planted about 90 or 85 daughter churches all over Nepal. This is one thing that is happening in Nepal. A church that is planted in 3 years, 4 years time, they will become a self-supporting church, which is not familiar in North India. In Nepal, a church that is planted, at least the churches we are planting, in 3 years, 4 years, they will become self-supporting, and in another 2 years, they will plant the first daughter church. Many of the early churches have 150, several of the early churches have 150 daughter churches, 90 daughter churches, 80 daughter churches, 65 daughter churches. This is how the work is growing. And also, when we organized the Assemblies of God of Nepal, we asked Dilip Chatri to be the first superintendent of the Assemblies of God. Unanimously. He served as the superintendent of the Assemblies of God for 12 years and the pastor of this church, a big church, a lot of money. And then he made a very big decision to leave all these things and to go to Guwahati, Assam, where there are 2 million Nepalis. And he is a pioneer missionary today in Guwahati, Assam. I have several stories of several young people who have become leaders. To tell it very short, today, the when I left Nepal, we had about 15 to 20 small groups in different parts of Nepal. Today, it has grown to 1,300 churches. Some of them have, one church has 2,000 believers. Most of the others are 1,000, 800. I should not say most of them. Several of them have 800, 700, 600. And some of the daughter churches themselves will have 300 believers. This is the way God is working there. Nepal is actually a story of miracles. Some 60 years ago, Nepal, perhaps you know, Nepal was the only Hindu country in the world. Some 60 years ago, Nepal had only something like 50 Christians. You take all together, Catholics and Seventh-day Adventists and everybody together, Nepal had only 60 or 50 Christians. Today, they say Nepal has 1.7 million Christians, 17 lakhs Christians. This is the way Christianity is growing in Nepal. The coming November, in another 10 days or so, November 3, 4, 5 will be the youth camp time. I'm speaking only about the Assemblies of God. This youth camp will be attended by 12,000 young people, and they meet in 30 places. And we expect at least 500 young people will become Christian workers, missionaries going into the tougher regions of Nepal. When we were there, we thought some of the areas on the high mountains bordering to Tibet, we will never be able to reach. Very, very high mountains. A kilo of rice will be something like 150 to 200 rupees because it is high mountain. It has to be carried 14, 15 days. And cultivation in those regions are possible only 3, 4 months because of the snow. We thought nothing will be possible there. We'll never be able to penetrate into these areas. But these brothers are doing a fantastic job. 4 months ago, my son and I went to one of such places. And they had about 18 Christian workers of that area. They came for 3 days of classes and a conference. One or two of them said they walked 4 days to reach to that particular conference. One of them said he has to go walk down 2 hours to a river to fetch water and then walk back 3 hours. In such a difficult situation, the Nepali brothers are committed Christian workers. I was in tears when I heard about one church, one pastor and his church. They have 300 villages in that district. And they have decided that they will go to every village. That church people, 2, 3 believers, will go to every villages in the district. They have already covered 70 villages. And from going from one village to another, it will take at least half a day walk. No cycle, no motorcycle, no bus, nothing is available on foot. And they are doing such great work in the country of Nepal. Well, God took us to Afghanistan after we finished our ministry. Now this is the call God has given to me. Go to a place, work for some time, establish church or churches, develop leaders, and move. And this is because of this direction that we decided to go to Afghanistan. We worked only there in Nepal we worked about 7 years. In Afghanistan we worked only 3 years. We learned the language, we learned the customs of these people, and the government kicked us out. They asked us to leave the country in 48 hours notice. We came to Delhi. Delhi at that time had 60,000 families of Afghan refugees. We started working among them. Things became very easy now. In Afghanistan, if I could speak one person about the Lord in a week, it is a big success. But here, every day, people are coming to my home, especially when they knew that I know the language, Indians knowing the language, their custom, they started coming. Every day we can have several our bell ringing, and they come. Alice would cook and feed them. I would sit and talk to them. Last November, we had the 25th anniversary of our Afghan church. We came to know that ours was the only known Afghan church in the world for quite some time. But thank God today we have several churches, Afghan churches around the world. We might have baptized about 400 Afghan Muslims within this period, but many of them go to other countries. We have our believers right here in Newport News. serving God, Hossein Andreas. He preaches in TV, radio to Afghanistan, Iran and Pakistan. He's there. He was planning to come and meet me, but because he has some difficulties, he could not come. We have people in California, in Canada, in Sweden, Australia. At least 2 centers are there. 3 centers are there in Australia. People preaching gospel to the Afghans and Iranians. Afghans and Iranians speak almost the same language. So they reach these people. And when we were in Afghanistan, if somebody told us there are 10 Afghan believers, we would have jumped of joy because that was a rare commodity. There's no Afghan believers. But today they say there are about 4,000 Afghan believers all over the world. And the biggest thing is the Afghans have started sharing the gospel to one another. It was very difficult. The long-term war between Russians and the Mujahideens made every Afghan very suspicious to one another. But slowly, the Afghans have started sharing the gospel to one another. And we believe something is going to happen in Afghanistan. Along with, I would like to tell you that things are happening in other Muslim countries like Iran. Ever since the time of Ayatollah Khomeini, there became a big opening in Iran. It is said that Iran is sitting in a volcano. Many Muslims are becoming Christians. You might have heard the government is thinking of bringing a law to execute anybody who left Islam. This is because of so many conversions, so many people converting into Christianity from Islam. 2 brothers came from Iran recently to our church in Delhi, and I asked him about Muslims coming to the Lord in Iran. And he said, he is coming from a small town in Iran. And in that small town, there should be at least 3,000 Muslim converts. This is the way things are happening. And I want to encourage you, ever since people who work among Muslims have started praying for Muslims on Friday, which is called the Jummah Prayer. When the Muslims go to their masjid or mosque and fall down and pray, Allah, lead us in the right path. We Christians join together somewhere near their masjid, home or church, and then pray for them. Some Christians gather in a church by fasting. Some gather by the side at the side of the masjid in a home, and some Christians even walk into the masjid along with the Muslims, put the cap as the Muslims do, fall down as the Muslims do, and pray to Jesus that God save these Muslims. Ever since this Jummah prayer has started, there is some movement happening in the Muslim world. A lot of things are through visions and dreams. And I would appreciate spending some time joining the Jummah prayer. I remember John Abu Bakr telling me, who was teaching us Islam many years ago. He told me like this: if we do not reach Muslims, the Muslims will reach us and our children. This is a warning. If we do not reach the Muslims, Muslims will reach us and our children. Very careful. Now it's time that the church really get up and start working among the Muslims. It will be tough. It will take time. But I remember John Abu Bakr putting a test to us. He asked, how many of you think the Muslims are very tough? And we all raised up hand. Yes, they are very tough. Then he asked a few questions to us. How many of you have very good Muslim friends? Most of us did not have. How many of you have tried to be friendly with Muslims? And most of us did not raise hand. How many of you are really systematically praying for Muslims? Hardly any, or one or two. Then he asked the question back to us. The Muslims are tough or you are tough? The Muslims are tough or you are tough? So this is something we need to consider. We should not write off saying the Muslims will never come. Yes, sometimes it will take 15 years, it will take 20 years for one Muslim to come to the Lord. But that is worth. Okay. Along with the Muslim work or the Afghan work in Delhi, we started Hindi and Nepali churches also. And some 10 years ago, we left all this work in the hands of other leaders there in Delhi. At present, the Afghan church pastor is Pastor Najib Sheikh. And the other churches are all led by other brothers. And 10 years ago, we left for Kanpur to work among the work in central Uttar Pradesh. Perhaps you know a little bit about Uttar Pradesh. This is the biggest state in India in terms of population. 160 million people. You may know the population of India, 1.2 billion. And 160 million, if you take Uttar Pradesh as a separate country, it will be the 6th or 7th largest country in the world in terms of population. UP is an ocean. This 160 million is an ocean, and we cannot, go everywhere because of our limited resources and limited manpower. So we focus just 9 districts. Even those 9 districts, thus far, we did not touch all those districts. 2 districts we have not even touched. Our intention is to train and send 20 local missionaries into every district. And they are expected to plant at least 10 village churches. So when our initial plan will be completed, it will be 1,800 village churches. This is what we are looking for. Perhaps I will not see it. God may call home before that. But there are my co-workers who are working. And our biggest problem is, what do you think? Our biggest problem is not money. Yes?
BJP?
No. BJP is not a problem. See, BJP, RSS and all these things are always there. And they will always be there. But our biggest problem is we do not have enough co-workers. So what we do is we train anybody available. You are going to hear something very strange from me. Some of them come for a job. We have a training center, and some of them hear that if they study in our training center for 3 months, they will get a job. And they will come for a job. And we will grab them. Yeah. Start. Hoping someday they will become a Christian and then a Christian worker. So we train even illiterates. If a person is illiterate and he expresses his desire to serve God, we teach him how to read and write and then send him. In the brochure you may see, there's on the top there are 3 churches. The middle one is a red church. This church is planted by an illiterate. We taught him how to read and write, and then he planted this church here. And just before we came, 3 weeks before we came, there was a baptism there. 37 people were baptized. Out of them, 20 were Sikh converts. So we take such risks and train people and put them. And the next one, the last one here, this church is planted by another young man who also came for a job. And God caught him. And God gave him a special burden of prayer. Fasting, prayer. And in his village he had very difficult time. He could not even put his feet there because of opposition from people. And he asked me what to do. I said, you go to a small town. But he said, no, I will work here. This is my village. I will work here. Finally, something happened. A lady from a high caste family, very influential lady, she had a big tumor in her stomach. She came to be prayed for. The tumor disappeared. And she began to go around and tell people, bring people. In the next Christmas, he called me to attend his Christmas program. And when I went there were about 500 people in the church. And he is like a mission director. In the month of August, he got married. 27 years old? Yeah, 27 years old. But if you sit by his side, you will think that he is sitting by the side of a big mission director. He has got all plans and strategies. We should reach that village like this village like this. Why did he come for? For a job. And God has helped us to take a little risk and at a speed. And our formula is 20:1. 20 people when we train, we may get 1. That's enough. It's very difficult for people from the south to come and work in the villages of UP because there's hardly people to come. Second, in the villages there's no electricity, no toilets, nothing. And these people come over there, they have to be in some town. And they will not be effective till for 5 years. Only after 5 years they will start be productive. So we are depending so much on the local people. And thus far God has helped us. And one thing we are very particular now is we are thinking of 2 things. One is these co-workers who are developing some real maturity, we'll buy a motorcycle for them. So that they can go at least 15-20 villages around them. They can cover long area. Another thing we are very seriously thinking or to take like girls, women, to be trained and to send into the villages. These 2 things are we are thinking seriously. Please remember to pray for our ministry. And I know you pray, pastor is there, and you have been helping us whenever you think, and God motivate you, you help us, and we are so thankful to you. This evening, maybe I'll share from God's word from the book of Timothy, 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse verse 1 to 9. Thou, I read from the old King James Version. Thou therefore, my son, be strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus. And the things that thou hast heard of among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men, who shall be able to teach others also. Thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. No man that warreth entangleth himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who hath chosen him to be a soldier. And if a man also strive for masteries, yet is he not crowned, except he strive lawfully. The husbandman that laboureth must be first that partaker of the fruit. Consider what I say, and the Lord will give thee understanding in all things. Remember that Jesus Christ of the seed of David was raised from the dead according to my gospel, wherein I suffer trouble as an evildoer, even unto bonds, but the word of God is not bound. I usually speak from this portion, sometimes a series, as a good soldier. You know, in workers' conference and believers meeting, sometimes I speak from this portion. But I would like to take a little here and there and bring a little message to us this evening. First of all, let's make a little comment on that word, son. 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 And we know that definitely Timothy is not the spiritual son of Apostle Paul. But at least to an extent he can be called the spiritual son of Apostle Paul. Instead of talking a lot of things, I wanted to straight away make a statement. Reproduction is one of the signs of maturity. I don't say reproduction is the sign of maturity. Reproduction is at least one of the signs of maturity. It's very important that we should have children. In the church, it is always good that we have someone to put our arm around and say, "This is my son. I taught him about the Lord. I brought him. Yes, my son." Where there is birth, there is excitement. Yes? Where there is birth, there is excitement. And I remember when my little son Jonathan was born, our daughter Priscilla and son David, they told me, "Daddy, I won't go to school today." They wanted to see the little baby, trying to open his eye, holding his hand. There is a lot of joy when a birth happened in the family. And I believe this is the case with spiritual birth in our churches. When children are born, you remember Hannah? When no children was born to her, she was weeping. In such an agony she was weeping. And I believe that God has called us to, this is the ministry that God has given to us. Here says, Paul says to Timothy, "Commit this gospel, I commit this, you commit to the next one, that they may commit to the next one, that they may commit to the next one." That's what I am putting, You commit, you got it, you commit to the next one, and they commit to the next one, that commit to the next one. This is something every believer has to be doing. I believe that somebody made a remark about churches. He said there are two types of churches. Perhaps you have heard of it. One is an orphanage church, and the other is an army church. Orphanage church. Go to an orphanage. In the morning, there will be a bell, and I'm imagining children will be on the line. Tea will be given. 8:30 there will be another bell. Breakfast will be given. 1:30 there will be another bell. Lunch will be given. Evening there will be another bell. Dinner will be given. That's all. Usually children grown in orphanages will not develop responsibilities because everything is given to them. If at all they do, they will sit together around here and there, and then they will say, I don't know what's happening. We are not getting our real food. Somebody is stealing our money. This can be a typical dialogue of children in the orphanage. Churches can become like this. Sunday morning there is a bell. Everybody taking the Bible and going to the church and telling God, give us manna for the whole week. Orphanage church. No responsibility. And some of them think that going and sitting itself is a big thing for the church. The army church. The next one is the other is an army church. Every believer is like an army man. Do you see in a platoon, if there are 65 people, and anyone telling, oh, I have just come to see what's happening here. No spectator there. Everybody is involved. Everybody is involved. That's an army church. I usually tell there are two types of Christian workers. Both are full-time Christian workers. But I differentiate between them. One is full-time volunteer Christian workers. The other is full-time paid Christian workers. We Christian workers may feel a little upset with that word. I consider I am a paid, full-time paid Christian worker. But others are full-time, have to be full-time volunteer Christian workers. Both are full-time. I remember when I was in Nepal, I was a manager for a business firm. And I found that I could do everything. Baptizing people, teaching in the training center, counseling the believers, everything I could do. And there can be believers, or every believer can be that sort of Christian soldiers, Christian workers. Then only the church will progress. Everyone, every Christian, the division usually is clergy and laity. I do not want to say clergy and laity. There's no laity. Both are full-time workers. Both are full-time workers. If this enters into the mind of every believer, there will be explosions in the churches. I told you, 60 years ago, Nepal had only something like 50 Christians, and today it is 1.7 million. No crusade there. No tract distribution there. No such mass media. It's all one-to-one, one-to-one, one-to-one. Every believer knows that this is my responsibility. I'm a believer. My responsibility is to share the gospel with everybody. Now, my time is going to be up, so I conclude. But in this gospel, in preaching this gospel, we can have a lot of excuses. Many, many, many excuses. Lack of time. One big thing people always say is no training. No training. I don't have any theological thing. I remember when I was traveling in train from Delhi to Trivandrum, an old Christian sitting by my side and talking big talk about his son, telling that he has dedicated his son for Christian work. And then in course of time he was telling, I will teach my son in such a way that he will be able to answer any kind of question coming from anywhere. And I thought immediately in my mind, this old man is not going to send his son to any Christian work, because that day will never come. Giving answer to every question that comes from everywhere, that day will never come. In fact, my professor, when I returned from for some holiday, when I came back to my Bible college, one of my professors asked me, Ezekiel, what sort of method are you using? I told him, sir, I use trial and error method. In the educational psychology, that is the poorest, lowest, trial and error. Try this. If it doesn't work, try this. And I challenged my Bible college professors, sir, if a person share the gospel to 100 people, if a person had shared the gospel with 100 people, he is better qualified than a person who has a doctorate in evangelism. You try this. And we always had a difficulty to start with. How to start? When we have difficulty to start something, what do the worldly people do when they have something difficulty to start with? To do something? They will go and drink a little bit, isn't so? Difficult things, very hard things. When it is a real hard thing, several people go and what do they do? Drink a little bit. And that's what I suggest you. If you find the evangelism difficult, have a little drink in the morning. Be filled with the new wine. If you are really filled with the new wine, you will get the courage. And once, twice, thrice, 10 people, you share the gospel to 10 people, you are hooked. You will see that, now I cannot live without sharing the gospel. And this starting thing is very, very important. I want to tell you something and close. Apostle Paul says here, I am bound, I am in chain. But the gospel that I preach will never be bound. That's the challenge. The gospel that I preach will not be bound. There can be many forces that can try to bind us. Time. In the United States, your problem must be time. Biggest problem is time. Time, social problems, money problem. So many things can be there. I'll tell you, you might have heard of a missionary among the Indians, David Brainerd. Have you heard of him? David Brainerd had a terminal TB. If he spoke something, he will vomit blood. Doctors advised him, you should not speak, stop preaching, and also don't ride on horses. But these two David Brainerd had to do. And he went among these people, vomiting blood, speaking, riding horses. He didn't have a translator. Finally, he got one. He was a drunkard. And David Brainerd will be speaking one or two sentences, and this drunkard will go to sleep. He has to be woken up. This is how he preached. And like that, he preached and preached and preached, and died at the age of 29. It is not important how long you live, but it is important how you live. Yes, we all like to have long life, but it is important how we live. David Brainerd was bound by so many problems, like loneliness, nobody in the society to be helpful, language barrier, health barrier, traveling barrier, everything was there. Excuses are plenty. The excuses we have, he must have had 10 times more excuses. But he decided that nothing will change him. As Apostle Paul said, I am determined that no force can stop me. If the church becomes like that, if every church has got 4 or 5 people like that, there will be explosion in the churches. Let me finish the story of David Brainerd. People think that he did not accomplish many things. But when David Brainerd died, people found out his diary and they published it. It's available, which is called the Journal of David Brainerd. By reading this diary, 200 gigantic missionaries went to the field, including William Perry. Jim Elliot. Many big missionaries have gone to the mission field because of this man and because of his life. And I want to ask you, will we be able to be an inspiration to the coming generation? I ask my brothers, what will your children talk about you? When you are dead, what will your children talk about you? My daddy ate 20 tons of rice and died. Will that be the thing that your children talk about you? Or will there be something that you can leave as an inspiration to the coming generation? Here's a small group here. Whatever we do for ourselves, it will perish here. The world and its lust will pass away. But what we do for God only will remain. Mm-hmm. Here we have a short life. Very short life. And that will be over very soon. I remember some of the races I had. After finishing the race, when my coach comes and tells me, even if I won the race, my coach sometimes comes and tells me, Ezekiel, you could have run the race a little more better. Look at the time. You didn't put every effort in, all your effort in the race. You came first, true, but he knows my capability. And then I sometimes wonder, oh, come on, I should have done this, I should have done that, I should have done that, I should have done that. But then suddenly it will come to my mind, but the race is already over. I cannot rerun the race. There's only a little one race for us to run. One life to live. And if you try for excuses, we have hundreds of excuses. Hundreds of excuses. There are things that are trying to force us to bind us. There are hundreds. But can we tell with Apostle Paul and say, I have decided that none of these forces should stop me from preaching the gospel that God has entrusted in my life. Thank you.